What if I told you that um, the melody of your favorite song and the drum beat that's driving it underneath are physically the exact same thing?
I mean, it sounds completely absurd when you first hear it.
It really does. Like,
Yeah.
think about that for a second. When you listen to music, you just have this massive, unquestioned assumption that we all make every day.
Right, you hear the rhythm, you hear the pitch, and they are two different things.
Exactly. You hear the kick drum, the bass line, the stuff that makes you tap your foot.
Yeah.
And then you hear the pitch, the vocals, the piano chords, that melody floating over the top.
And we instinctively process those as two completely, entirely different dimensions of sound.
Right. But today's deep dive is it's going to totally shatter that assumption. Because our mission today is to fundamentally rewire how you understand sound.
Yeah, because the science actually shows that music doesn't begin with notes. It begins with repetition.
Which is just a wild concept.
Yeah. It's a profound shift in perspective. I mean, the research we're synthesizing today, drawing really heavily from Ursin Eason's work on the foundations of music, and along with some incredibly detailed studies on how our neural pathways actually code audio, it reveals something crazy.
That rhythm and pitch are not independent.
Exactly. The distinction we hear between a beat and a musical note, it isn't actually happening out there in the real world. It's entirely a construct of your own biology.
It's like a scale-dependent illusion.
Yes. A total biological illusion.
So let's break down that illusion because, wrapping your head around this is kind of tough. The idea that a drum beat and a piano note are the exact same physical phenomenon.
Just a sequence of identical impacts repeating in time.
Yeah, it feels completely counterintuitive. How can a distinct, thump from a drum and a really smooth, sustained C-sharp from a violin be the same thing?
Well, to understand that, we have to look at the temporal resolution of the human ear.
Okay.
Basically, your auditory system has a frame rate.
Like a camera.
Exactly like a camera. There is a strict physical limit to how fast your brain can track distinct, separate events. So let's think about the actual physical sound wave that's traveling through the air.
Right.
It has a period, which is just, the amount of time between each repeating impact or wave cycle. When the time between those impacts is relatively long, your ear can easily resolve each individual event.
So you can hear the silence between the hits.
Right. You hear the spacing.
And that spacing is what we experience as rhythm.
Huh.
I'm trying to picture this physically.
Yeah.
Let's imagine someone knocking on a solid wooden door.
Okay, good analogy.
So knock, knock, knock. If they're hitting that door, say, twice a second, your brain has absolutely no problem processing each knock as a distinct, separate event, right?
No problem at all. You can anticipate the next one.
Right, you could easily tap your foot to it.
But imagine that the person knocking on the door starts speeding up.
Okay.
4 times a second, then 10 times a second, 20 times a second.
Getting really fast.
Right, and at a certain point, the time between those individual knocks becomes so microscopic that your brain's processing speed simply cannot keep up.
It hits that frame rate limit.
Exactly. It crosses a critical biological threshold, and when that happens, the separate events stop being separate, they crash into each other, and they basically fuse into a single, continuous, sustained perception.
Wait, let me make sure I'm fully grasping the weight of this.
Go for it.
Are you saying that if we magically speed up that exact same physical knocking on the door
Yeah.
until the knocks are happening, 400 times a second, our brain entirely stops hearing a fast rhythm and literally hallucinates a musical pitch?
Yeah.
Like, we would hear a sustained note humming from the actual door.
Yes. But your brain wouldn't just hallucinate it, it would experience it as a pure, undeniably musical pitch.
Oh, wow.
Because as the repetition rate increases, absolutely nothing essential changes in the physical signal that's traveling through the air.
It's still just a bunch of knocks.
It is still just a series of rapid, individual physical impacts. But once it crosses that temporal threshold, that frame rate limit, your auditory system fundamentally changes how it represents that information to your consciousness.
Because you can no longer resolve the time, you perceive pitch.
Exactly. You lose the time, you gain the pitch.
That is just incredible. So the sound in the room hasn't changed its fundamental nature at all, only its density?
Only at speed. Right.
But doesn't the ear have limits on what it can physically capture? Like, I'm thinking about how a microphone has a sample rate, or, how humans simply cannot hear dog whistles.
Oh, right. That is a really crucial distinction to make here. We aren't talking about the absolute limits of human hearing, like a dog whistle.
Right, because a dog whistle is we just don't hear anything.
Exactly. A dog whistle is a frequency so high that the actual physical mechanics of your ear simply don't register it. It never even enters the system.
Okay.
And we also aren't talking about a sampling constraint, like a digital audio file where the physical information is just lost at the doorway.
So the data's still there.
In this scenario, yes. The physical sound wave entering your ear still contains all those hundreds of individual, distinct impacts per second. The physical reality entering your head has not blurred at all.
Wow. Okay. So the data is making it inside the ear completely intact.
Exactly.
But the structure that actually survives in our perception is what changes.
Yes. Eason's work points out that pitch is essentially the spectral image of temporal repetition.
The spectral image.
Yeah, it's the form that time takes when time can no longer be directly resolved by your brain.
Okay, but if the physical signal in the air is still just a series of rapid knocks, right?
Right.
Why does our perception flip so drastically? Like, why do we hear a smooth musical note instead of just an impossibly fast, kind of chaotic rattling sound?
Well, to answer that, we have to trace the signal deeper into the biology of the ear itself.
Okay, let's go inside the ear.
We are basically looking at what happens when a biological tracking system fails.
A system failure.
A massive system failure. And how the body compensates for that failure by entirely shifting its encoding strategy.
Oh, this is where the research gets so elegant. Let's get into the mechanics of that.
Yeah, so when sounds are at lower frequencies, meaning when we are comfortably in the realm of rhythm, the auditory system uses a method called temporal coding.
Temporal coding, so tracking the time,
Exactly. In temporal coding, your nervous system is literally keeping the beat.
like tapping its foot.
Pretty much. When the repeating impacts are slow enough, the neurons in your auditory pathway can fire in perfect one-to-one synchronization with the incoming sound wave.
Okay, so a physical impact hits the eardrum, and a neuron fires a spike in response.
Yes. Another impact hits, another spike fires. It's called phase locking. Your brain is directly tracking the physical time between the events.
But I mean, biological systems have hard limits, right? A neuron needs time to reset after it fires.
The refractory period, yeah.
Right. So as the speed of the impacts increases, as that rhythm gets faster and faster, the nervous system starts to struggle.
It just cannot fire fast enough or accurately enough to maintain that perfect one-to-one synchronization with hundreds or even thousands of impacts every single second.
That makes total sense. So the precision completely breaks down.
Right, into what we call phase incoherence. The neurons are firing chaotically, they're dropping beats, they're completely unable to maintain the tracking.
And if your brain just gave up right here,
Uh-huh.
high-frequency sounds would just be an incomprehensible wash of noise, right?
It would be awful. But instead, the auditory system performs this brilliant pivot.
Okay.
Because it can no longer track the rapid events individually in time, it abandons temporal coding altogether.
It just gives up on time.
Yep.
And it switches to place coding.
Place coding, exactly.
This is where the story gets so fascinating for me, because it essentially means our biology takes the dimension of time and re-encodes it as physical space.
It's beautiful, isn't it?
It really is. So to help visualize this for you, imagine you're standing on an overpass, looking down at a highway, trying to count the cars passing underneath you. If the traffic is moving slowly, you can easily point your finger at every single car. 1, 2, 3. You are tracking the distinct events in time.
Right, which represents your brain using temporal coding. It's a very direct, linear tracking of events.
Exactly. But now imagine those cars suddenly accelerate to an absurd speed, like Mach 10.
A literal blur.
Yeah, they're moving so fast that they blur together into a continuous solid streak of light. You can't possibly count them individually anymore.
Your temporal tracking has completely failed.
Exactly. So your brain changes tactics. Instead of trying to count the cars, you just note where the blur is located.
Oh, that's good.
Right. Like, is the blur in the far left lane or the far right lane? You've completely stopped tracking the time the cars take to pass, and you've started tracking their physical location on the road.
That analogy maps perfectly onto the physical architecture of your inner ear.
Okay, tell me how.
Well, inside your ear is the cochlea. It's a small, fluid-filled, spiral-shaped organ. And running along the inside of this spiral is the basilar membrane.
So that membrane is the multi-lane highway.
You can think of it exactly like that multi-lane highway. When the temporal structure of a sound becomes too incredibly fast for your neurons to track, the sound wave physically vibrates a very specific location on that membrane.
Oh, so different speeds hit different spots.
Yes. The membrane is tuned spatially. High-speed impacts, meaning high frequencies, vibrate the base of the cochlea. Lower speed impacts vibrate further down toward the apex.
Wow.
So when a fast repetition enters the ear, it physically stimulates a specific geographical address on this membrane.
Your brain stops trying to count the microscopic beats
Yeah.
and simply reads the address.
Exactly. Time literally collapses into space. And the activation of that specific spatial location is what your brain interprets as a musical pitch.
So a single note on a guitar string is just a rhythm in the air that was too fast for our ear to count, so the ear mapped that rhythm to a physical spot on the cochlea instead.
That's it. That physical spatial spot is pitch.
The distinction isn't in the air at all.
No, it's a profound representational shift inside our own heads. It completely reframes what we consider to be the basic building blocks of sound.
It really does. But, it gets even deeper. Because we rarely listen to just one pitch, right?
Very rarely.
Music is built on harmony, chords, multiple instruments playing all at once. What happens when we take two of these unresolvable rhythms, two of these Mach 10 blurs on the highway, and we play them at the exact same time?
Now this is where we cross from the biology of a single note into the actual physics of musical harmony.
Okay, let's go there.
Once the ear has generated the perception of pitch by mapping these fast periodic structures to space, those structures begin to interact with one another.
Right, because they're happening together.
Exactly. Let's consider two interacting frequencies. Underneath the smooth illusion of the pitches you hear, there are still two separate sequences of rapid physical impacts happening in the air.
And the relationship between those two sequences is governed by ratios.
Yes, mathematical ratios.
The research points out that very simple numerical ratios, like 2 to 1, 3 to 2, or 4 to 3, they produce a profound sense of coherence to the human ear.
They do.
Like a 2 to 1 ratio, for example, is what musicians call an octave. If you play a middle C and the C above it, it sounds incredibly stable.
It almost sounds like the same note, just thicker, right?
Exactly. But why is that specific 2 to 1 ratio so pleasing to us?
Well, it goes right back to the physical impacts we were talking about earlier. A 2-to-1 ratio means that for every 2 impacts of the higher pitched note, there's exactly 1 impact of the lower pitched note.
Okay.
Because the math is so simple, the physical sound waves sync up perfectly on every second beat. They physically align in the air and inside your ear.
Oh, so there's essentially playing a very fast, perfectly interlocking polyrhythm.
Precisely. The physical waves aren't fighting each other, they cooperate.
But what if they don't cooperate?
Well, conversely, let's look at a highly complex ratio, say 45 to 32.
Okay, that sounds messy.
It is. This represents a very dissonant interval, something that sounds harsh or tense to us.
Right.
Because the numbers don't divide cleanly, the microscopic impacts of the two sound waves rarely align. They are constantly slightly out of phase.
The one wave is pushing your eardrum in while the other is trying to pull it out.
Yes, it creates a physical friction, a literal physical beating or roughness on the membrane. Your auditory system struggles to stabilize this chaotic, misaligned interaction.
And your brain interprets that physical misalignment as auditory tension or dissonance.
Exactly.
So when we listen to a symphony, right,
Yeah.
or a beautifully arranged vocal harmony, and we hear a chord that is so perfect it literally gives us chills,
Yeah.
we aren't just appreciating some abstract cultural rule about what notes are supposed to go together.
Not at all.
We are literally perceiving high-speed rhythmic alignments that are structurally physically stable.
Yes. The research frames this with a brilliant piece of phrasing. It says, harmony is not the combination of notes, but the stabilization of interacting periodicities.
The stabilization of interacting periodicities. Wow, that just reframes thousands of years of music.
Completely.
We aren't stacking abstract concepts on top of each other. We are literally finding the pockets of physical stability in a chaotic space.
Exactly. These simple, stable ratios act as natural attractor.
Attractors, meaning we're drawn to them.
Right. If you imagine all the possible frequencies you could play at once as a vast, multi-dimensional space, most of that space is filled with complex, misaligned ratios that produce tension.
The friction.
Yes. But scattered throughout that space are these pockets of perfect alignment, the 2-to-1s, the 3-to-2s. The human ear is naturally drawn to these attractors because our biological hardware can process them cleanly and efficiently.
Okay, but this brings up a huge contradiction that we really need to dig into here.
Okay, what's the contradiction?
The space of possible frequencies is continuous and infinite.
Sure.
Like you can slide your finger up the neck of a violin and hit an infinite microscopic number of pitches between a C and a C sharp.
Right. A smooth glide.
But if you look at a piano, it has exactly 88 fixed, rigid keys. So if harmony is just the natural organic alignment of physical speeds, why do we have these incredibly rigid musical scales that dictate precisely which notes are quote-unquote allowed to exist?
It's a great observation, and it touches on the difference between the underlying physics of sound and the human architecture we build on top of it.
Okay.
The research resolves this contradiction by exploring the concept of quantization.
Quantization.
Right. Quantization in this context simply means taking an infinite smooth continuum, like sliding your finger up that violin string and chopping it up into a distinct staircase of specific fixed steps.
Selecting a small handful of usable notes out of an infinite ocean of possibilities.
Precisely. And we have to distinguish between two completely different types of this process, emergent quantization and imposed quantization.
Let's start with emergent quantization, because this seems tied directly to those natural attractors we were just talking about.
It is.
Mm.
Emergent quantization is nature's architecture. It is the physics and the biology. We just established that because of how sound waves physically align, certain ratios naturally produce stability and coherence, while others produce rough, dissonant tension.
Right. The simple math versus the messy math.
Exactly. These stable regions, the octaves, the perfect fifths, they emerge entirely on their own. They aren't arbitrary rules created by humans.
So they just exist in physics.
Yes, they are fundamental physical realities of how periodic waves interact with the limits of the human nervous system. They define what is objectively perceptually stable.
Okay, so the physics of sound provides these natural landing pads, these islands of stability in the ocean of frequencies.
I love that phrase, islands of stability.
But, an island of stability isn't a piano keyboard. That's where the second type comes in, right?
Exactly. Imposed quantization.
Impose.
Yes. This is where human culture, agreement, and engineering step in. While nature gives us the general regions of stability, humans have to decide exactly how to navigate between them.
Wow.
Imposed quantization is the grid we lay over the natural landscape.
And different cultures lay down entirely different grids, right? This is where the concept gets incredibly illuminating.
Totally.
If you look at Western music, we use a system called 12-tone equal temperament. Hundreds of years ago, Western musicians and instrument makers mathematically chopped the octave into 12 perfectly equal, evenly spaced steps.
Which is actually a massive compromise.
Right. Aside from the octave itself, almost none of the keys on a modern piano perfectly align with those pure, natural, emergent ratios we talked about. They're all very slightly out of tune.
It's true, but we accept that slight physical misalignment for practical reasons.
Like what?
Well, by mathematically forcing the notes into an evenly spaced grid, we gain the ability to build complex instruments like the piano. And we gain the ability for composers to instantly shift a song into any key without the instrument sounding horribly broken.
Right, so the imposed quantization sacrificed pure physical perfection for incredible structural flexibility.
Exactly. But if you travel outside the Western tradition, you see entirely different systems of imposed quantization.
Oh, like what?
In classical Indian music, or traditional Arabic music, they don't chop the octave into 12 rigid equal blocks.
They use microtonal scales, right?
Yes. They might have 22 distinct intervals in an octave, allowing musicians to access entirely different shades of emotion and entirely different physical alignments that a piano simply cannot reproduce.
That's amazing.
Yeah, the underlying physics, the emergent quantization, those natural attractors of stability, they're exactly the same for every human ear on the planet.
But the imposed quantization, the cultural map drawn over that physical territory, varies wildly based on the aesthetic and practical goals of a specific musical tradition. As someone who has always felt a bit intimidated by music theory, this framing is a massive relief.
How so?
Well, when you are a learner trying to memorize scales and intervals and key signatures, it can feel like you are being forced to obey a set of punishing, arbitrary laws.
Right.
Laws invented centuries ago by dead European composers just to make playing the guitar harder.
Yep.
You feel like you're just memorizing abstract math.
It really strips the mystery away, doesn't it?
Completely.
You aren't learning arbitrary rules, human conventions, the tuning standards, the fixed keys, the scales they merely approximate and operationalize, the biological regions of perceptual stability that already existed before the first instrument was ever built.
So we didn't impose musical structure onto a blank canvas of noise.
No, we discovered the structure that our own auditory system mandated, and we simply standardized it so we could share it.
We standardized the stability so we could communicate it to each other. I mean, That fundamentally changes how you look at a piece of sheet music. It isn't a list of commands, it's a map of biological safe zones.
That's a brilliant way to put it. And it brings us full circle to the underlying theme of this entire deep dive. The continuous path from a single physical impact to a complex symphony is unbroken.
Let's retrace that path to lock it in for you. It all starts with simple repetition in the air, right?
A physical impact happening over and over.
Right. And when that repetition is slow, your brain tracks it directly and you perceive it as rhythm.
But as the speed of the repetition increases, it inevitably hits that temporal threshold. Your biological tracking system becomes completely overwhelmed.
And that threshold triggers a massive representational shift. The brain stops tracking the beat in time and instead tracks the physical location of the vibration along the space of the cochlea.
Time becomes space.
The fast rhythm is transformed into the perception of pitch.
Exactly. And once you have pitches, you have multiple incredibly fast repeating structures interacting in the air.
Those interactions create stability constraints. Some frequencies align physically, creating natural attractors of harmony, while others clash, creating tension.
And these regions of stability give us emergent quantization.
Right, the physics.
Yeah.
And finally, humans lay a cultural grid over those natural regions of stability. We standardize the frequencies into distinct notes and scales,
Giving us imposed quantization, instrument design, and the diverse musical traditions of the world.
It's just wild. The distinction between a rhythm and a pitch doesn't exist in the signal in the air.
It does.
The distinction between a raw frequency and a musical note is just human engineering applied to a biological limitation. What appear to be the fundamental building blocks of music are not primitives at all.
No, they are entirely governed by the finite resolution of your own auditory system. The music is quite literally inside you. Your physical limitations as an organism dictate the boundaries of the art form.
Which leaves me with a final, slightly mind-bending thought that I want you to carry with you today.
Ooh, all right.
We've established that musical structure, everything we consider a note, a melody, or a beautiful chord, is just a specific set of configurations that remain coherent under the very specific temporal limits of the human brain.
Right, our specific frame rate.
But what if we consider a radically different auditory system? Imagine a species of bat, or a dolphin, or even a hypothetical alien that possesses an auditory processing speed drastically faster than ours.
Their temporal threshold would be situated completely differently.
Exactly. Their brain's frame rate could be 10,000 times faster than ours. They wouldn't experience that biological breakdown, that shift from time to space at the same speeds we do.
Right.
So if you were to play them the greatest masterpieces of human culture, a Mozart concerto, or the most soaring, emotional vocal performance we've ever recorded, would they even hear the pitch?
Oh, wow.
Or would their brains easily track the microscopic spacing of the sound waves, leaving them to hear our grandest symphonies as nothing more than a chaotic, impossibly fast, disconnected drum solo?
That's amazing. The very things we perceive as sweeping melodies might just be highly complex polyrhythms to them.
The beauty isn't in the sound wave, it's in the blur.
It's all in the blur.
I am never going to listen to a simple drum beat or a piano chord the same way again. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning what you hear, and we'll catch you next time.